Weekly Dartscast in the chat there, guys. If you love these sort of things, chatting darts, listening to, go check them out. If you haven't done so already, get on Twitter, get on social media, go check out the Weekly Dartscast. Absolutely brilliant podcast, guys. They have different guests on all the time, and they're always finger on the pulse with that. They're always relevant guests, really good questions as well. Go check them out, guys. They are worth having a look at.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. I'm Alex Moss, and joining me for this, our Grand Slam of Darts preview special, is the darts statistician, the maximum century man. He's now clocked up 100 scores of 180 on the dartboard, and he's also regained his Darts Driver King title. Burton DeWitt, how are you doing?
I'm over the moon from that achievement, and I did it with my second throw of the night, which indicates that it was completely luck, because if you're able to get a 180 on your second throw of the night, or at least if I'm able to, it clearly shows that it was luck, because it usually takes me about 100 more throws just to start to find my throw. But it's good to get past that milestone. If we include my two soft tip 180s, I'm actually at 102, but who counts that? One of those soft tip 180s had 120 points on the floor, but it still counts in soft tip. How are you, Alex?
Yeah, I'm doing good here, thank you. Sadly, no 180s for me. I did manage a 140 and 100 earlier today when we were recording this. That's probably as good as it gets for me at the moment. But we are into non-stop November, as I'm going to call it, the Grand Slam Players' Championship Finals, Lakeside, all to come over the next 3 or 4 weeks. Lots of darts to enjoy. So let's start to look ahead to some of that. Starting off with the Grand Slam of Darts, almost upon us, gets underway in Wolverhampton on Saturday lunchtime. But we've got some big names missing from the field this year. Gerwyn Price, Nathan Aspinall, Damon Heta, Johnny Clayton, 4 of the world's current top 9, not going to be in action this weekend and over next week. Does that take away from the magnitude of this event?
Well, you also missed one other event coming up, the World Youth Final over in the PDC. Of course, also the World Youth Final in the WDF as part of their World Championships. But nonstop November truly is nonstop for darts of all ages. But as far as having 4 of the top 9 missing, that's obviously a lot. But it's not unprecedented to see big name players miss out. And that's part of the uniqueness of this event. This event is limited to the players who have been able to make a major final, top the various, or finish second for some of them, the various affiliated tours for the PDC, win a Euro Tour, assuming there's enough spots left over, and at least there usually is to get some Euro Tour people in, and if there's still some spots left over, win a Players' Championship, or in most cases win multiple Players' Championships. And before the European Championships, there were going to be some players that got in through that Players' Championship table. Chris Dobie with his 3 titles was in a spot. Damon Heta with 2 titles was in a spot. But because we ended up having 2 finalists who were not yet qualified, Ritchie Edhouse making his first final of any sort in senior level darts in the PDC, and Jermaine Wadamena making, I think, his 3rd final, and obviously his first big final, first stage final, put the cat amongst the pigeons and threw those 2 players out. So we didn't get anyone in from the Players' Championship event for season 2024. And as a result, because it's such a limited qualification format, it does mean that every now and then we're going to start seeing some of those players miss out. If you haven't made a major final and you haven't won a Euro Tour, you probably aren't getting here. And for Gerwyn Price, a 3-time former champion, it certainly was surprising, but it's not unprecedented. Johnny Clayton, who's finding form as of late. I mean, on most of the season, it wasn't even surprising, but certainly over the last few months, it was surprising. But he didn't make a major final. He didn't win a Euro Tour again this year. It takes something away, but it also adds something, because now we suddenly have a televised major event where there's more space for other players in here. And part of that also comes with the 8 qualification spots. I forgot to mention that. Obviously, those players could have won through the qualifiers. Gerwyn Price made it to the final round of the qualifiers before falling to Mickey Mansell. So there's that backup route in. But it adds something because you now have a much more diverse field than you otherwise would have. And some of that starts with those affiliated tours where you have the winner of the Challenge Tour, you have the winner of the development tour. You have the winner of or the person who the winner of the Asian Tour and the CDC Continental Cup. You also have the two finalists from last year's Youth World Championships to go along with the Women's World Matchplay winner and the person who tops the Women's Series Order of Merit. In this case, since Beaugreaves took both of those, it went to Noëlyn van Leuven as the Women's Series runner-up to take the second spot. It creates a field that is much broader than most of the other 32 player fields. The World Match Play, World Grand Prix, the exact same qualification format in terms of top 16 overall, top 16 Pro Tour Order of Merit. The European Championships is also a 32-person event, but it's limited to the top 32 from the European Tour Order of Merit. And as we saw this year, that was a much more condensed group of players who had a legitimate chance to qualify for it because of the change to only have less than half as many players qualify for each Euro Tour event as in the past because of the addition of 16 players who would qualify through the overall order of merit, in addition to 16, the top next 16 on the Pro Tour, getting into each Euro Tour event. So this gives us just a different field, but it's a field of players who have earned the right to be here. And that's the big thing. And many sports have something like this. The PGA Tour in golf starts each season with a limited field event of only players who won an event the previous year. This event isn't exactly that, but it's pretty close. And it makes it something different. It makes it special in its own right. It used to be special for a different reason. It was the only event in the PDC other than the UK Open, if you came through as a Riley's qualifier, where BDO players were able to play. That has now been replaced by having the regional tours and other tours have spots here. But it still has its uniqueness. It still has its specialness. It still has its difficulty to qualify, at least to qualify by right and not have to go to the qualifiers. So I don't think the tournament is missing anything by not having 4 of the top 9. If anything, I think it gains through its uniqueness.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And just touching on a few things you said there about this being a diverse field, a unique field, the Grand Slam. And I was putting together some of my favourite moments from the Grand Slam last week. And a lot of them did involve the BDO versus PDC element, which we had for a lot of the Grand Slam's history. That's gone away over the last 4 or 5 years for obvious reasons. And it kind of feels like the Grand Slam has been trying to find its own identity again, because before it was heavily that PDC versus BDO. Now it's trying to find something else. And I do like the fact that this is such a hard event to qualify for. You've got to get to a major final in the PDC to get in, or win through that one-day qualifier, which, as we've seen last week, a lot of the big names that hadn't qualified went to it and weren't able to qualify, or via some of the other routes, the PDC affiliate tours. So it's a difficult one to get into. And I went and had a look back just the last couple of years, really, to see how many of the big names have missed out on the Grand Slam. And last year you had Joe Cullen, Dimitri van der Berg. I think they were the only top 16 players, maybe Ross Smith in there as well. 2022, James Wade, he was around the top 5. Gary Anderson around the top 8, top 10. They were 2 big names to miss out. But this year, yeah, it does feel like there's a noticeable number of big names that are not going to be going to Wolverhampton for the Grand Slam. And this is one of the PDC and Sky's premier events. The Grand Slam goes on for 9 days, one of the longest outside of the World Championship and the Premier League. So when you're missing Gerwyn Price, Nathan Aspinall, Damon Heta, Johnny Clayton, 4 of the world's top 10, on paper it does feel a little light on the ground. But that's not to take away from the players who have qualified in their place, because those 4 players, they were all in that last chance qualifier and they were beaten fair and square. But you also look at some of the names that have got in even before that qualified because of what they've done on the big stage. You look at Mike De Decker winning the World Grand Prix, Ritchie Edhouse winning the European Championship, Jermaine Watermina getting to the final. That's 3 spots in the field. And before those 2 events, if you'd have said 3 of the 4 finalists are going to be players that haven't qualified for the Grand Slam yet, you'd have probably raised an eyebrow, but you'd have probably said, okay, one of them will be Gerwyn Price, maybe one of them will be Nathan Aspinall. So we are seeing different players come through, get to these finals, win these major events and take the spots of some of the established names. But for Gerwyn Price in particular, I think he's the standout name from that list. And I put it out on social media over the weekend as well, brings to an end a run of 62 consecutive appearances in major ranking events. And the last one he missed, funny enough, was the Grand Slam in 2015. And I know for going Price not at his best right now, he seems to have lost some of his mojo and that spark, but still seeing his name in the field, it does add to the event, his box office, as is Nathan Aspinall. But I guess over the weekend we will see people asking, where's Price, where's Aspinall, where's Heta, and so on. But I think once we turn the corner to next week and the players who have qualified in their place, and they're going to get the chance to shine, take the limelight, take the focus. And yeah, I think when we get to next week, we get towards the end of the group stage into the knockouts, all those players, they're going to get a chance to try and walk away with that Eric Bristow Trophy, and they're the ones in the field. They deserve their chance, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they get on.
Well, there are 32 players that will be taking the field in what is the last Sky Major before the World Championships. Of course, the Players' Championship Finals in Minehead still to come on ITV in a few weeks' time. But who do you have as being most in need of a big run in Wolverhampton at the Grand Slam?
Well, when I put this question down on the spreadsheet, one of the first things that came to mind was the Premier League. And for our listeners who have been tuning into this podcast all year, you'll know there was a distinct lack of Premier League coverage from us. We openly said we hardly watched any of it. And in fact, we probably spend more time predicting and discussing who is going to be in the Premier League the months leading into it, rather than the actual tournament itself. But yeah, the Premier League I thought of because it does look right now to be the most wide open race to get into it that we've ever seen. There's been previous years where there's been the 8, 9 or 10 players they've picked themselves, or there might have been 1 or 2 spots up for debate. But right now, I think you've got Luke Humphries, Luke Littler, Michael Van Gerwen as dead certs. And beyond that, I really don't think you can say anyone else has done enough to book their spot in the Premier League. Okay, you've got the top 4 in the rankings after the Worlds. They're going to be in automatically, which right now is going to be Humphries, Van Gerwen, and then Cross and Chisnall. But there's a lot of money up for grabs over these next 2 months, so a lot can change. And I was looking actually, Johnny Clayton, Damon Heta, Gerwin Price, 3 players not in the Grand Slam this week, but they're the 3 players directly below in that post World Championship order of merit. So there's going to be players that are going to overtake them potentially on that list over the next week. So yeah, I think the Grand Slam is an opportunity for a lot of players to stake their claim for being in the Premier League next year and maybe take some of that pressure off going into Ali Pali. I know the World Championships, there's enough pressure as it is. It is the big one, the one that they all want to win. They work towards it all year. But we've heard players say it before. They've gone into the Worlds with the Premier League on their mind, and it's thrown their preparation off, and they've not performed well, maybe gone out first or second game, and they've been pipped to the post. There's been other players that have took their spot in the Premier League. So, yeah, I think getting some credit in the bank as such with a deep run at the Grand Slam, that could maybe put 1 or 2 players in that pole position for the Premier League. I look at someone like Stephen Bunting, who won the Masters right at the start of the year. Mike the Decker, one of the recent major winners on Sky, which of course is going to help his cause a little bit more. And one other name I'll throw out is Michael Smith, because we spoke about Ross Smith heading into the European Championship, his title money from 2 years ago dropping off, ended up going out in the first round of that event this year, dropped out the top 10, top 16. Michael Smith currently number 2 in the world, but after the World Championship down at number 14, and he won the Grand Slam 2 years ago, the Worlds 2 years ago. So if he can reclaw some of that prize money that is going to be dropping off his ranking, then that could stand him in good stead going into the Worlds when, yeah, just the 500 grand that he's going to have to try and defend on his ranking.
Yeah, no big deal defending $500,000, right? Now, you said some of the players I was going to say. I mean, Michael Smith for that exact reason, but also because he only got through here through the pairs event with Luke Humphries finally winning the title back for England. But it's been, other than that, relatively slim pickings for him this year. And especially with that £500,000 to defend at the World Championships, it's not just about defending this, but it's about starting to find his best game so that he can have a chance of defending that money in a month and a half's time. Because right now, he's good enough, but you would put 4, 5, 6 players that you would think would be more likely to win the World Championship on current form than him, if not more than that. But I'll go through, a couple other players. And starting with that talk about the World Championships, boy, right now it is a very, very tight race between being the provisional 13th seed and being the provisional 17th seed. And there's still a few players right behind that who aren't that far back in Ryan Searle and Gary Anderson, so you can even push it through 19th. And the reason I'm pointing that out is the 16th or 17th seed, assuming they get through their first two matches, you're going to have to go in the last 16 against Luke Humphries. And there's a big difference right now between having to go against Luke Humphries and having to go against Michael Smith or Michael Van Guren or Rob Cross or Dave Chisnell. Of those players, unquestionably Luke Humphries is playing the best. He is the world number one and playing like it. So for Danny Noppert, Peter Wright, Luke Littler, James Wade, Josh Rock, all of whom are in this field, this is a big opportunity to move away from that number 16 or number 17 spot with a good run to move up. So it's a big opportunity for them to avoid a potentially very difficult last 16 tie, assuming you get through that far at the World Championships. You mentioned Premier League, and it's a big opportunity for the players to make a deep run to get themselves in the position of being in the Premier League, but just getting here puts you in that position. Someone like Chris Dobie was someone who needs a big run somewhere if he's going to get into the Premier League, but he didn't qualify for this event, so he can't even be the answer here, even though he's gone out in the first round of his last two majors. But someone who is here, who, as you mentioned as well, is being close to getting in by right into the top four in the overall order of merit to get one of those automatic spots, is Dave Chisnell. Look at what Chizzy was able to do the last 2 years on the Euro Tour and then compare it to him on television, because he has not even been competitive in televised events this year. He did have a very, very good first round at the World Grand Prix, which is probably his most consistent major overall. And he wasn't terrible in a second round match against Dimitri Vandenberg there. But take that aside, and over the last few months, he's been a non-factor in televised matches. He averaged 86 in nearly losing to nil to Christopher Tyskie in Blackpool, went a couple legs late to only lose by 10 legs to 2. He averaged 87 in winning just one leg in Amsterdam. And then he followed off with the worst performance of the trio, averaging 85 and losing to nil in the first round in Dortmund. For a variety of reasons, Dave Chisnell is in need of a very big week, because in one regard, he might be able to get into the Premier League automatically if he can get a couple rounds. But outside of that, his performances on television don't even have him in the conversation, and he needs to find his way into that conversation to match his brilliance on the Euro Tour.
We'll continue our look ahead to the Grand Slam in a moment, but let's bring in our first guest on this week's show. He is the newest winner of a major title in the PDC. It's time to believe in the sleeve. Here's our chat with Ritchie Edhouse. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the newly crowned European champion, Ritchie Edhouse. Thanks for the time, Ritchie. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks.
And we're talking just over a week after you won the European Championship in Dortmund. What has this last week been like for you adjusting to life as a PDC major champion?
It's just been chilled, really. I've just been doing bits around the house and just pottering around, really, just trying to relax.
And on that Sunday night after you won the title, you said you were looking forward to bringing the trophy home to your grandkids. What was their reaction when you walked in with the trophy?
Oh, they wrote a big thing on the wall, like on the bits of paper on the wall, well done, Granddad, and they loved the trophy. Yes, bless them.
Good times. And you had a couple of Players' Championships just a few days after that in Leicester. What was it like walking into the venue as a major champion? Did it feel any different?
Yes and no. I mean, when the players coming up to you, it was brilliant to see some of the big profile players coming up and wishing me well done and all that. It was surreal, to be fair.
Getting to the final of the European Championship, that got you a spot in the Grand Slam. We saw the qualifiers take place on Friday. How glad were you not to have to play in them? Because following them, they looked brutal. A lot of big names have missed out.
Oh yeah, I was watching. I was putting shows like Martin Lukeman and that was it. So I was watching them, and some of them averages and some of the obviously the big boys going out early, and it is brutal. So glad I went there.
And was your Leicester hotel non-refundable, or did you manage to get your money back because you didn't have to play on the Friday?
No, I stayed until the Friday morning, so used it up and then just come home then.
Fair enough. Well, after the Pro Tours, you've had a weekend off from playing on the tour. What did you get up to? Did you manage to get in any celebrations with family and friends?
No, the missus is on holiday at the moment, which is before all this. And no, so I've just been potting around doing bits around the house.
Well, we'll come back to the European Championship later, but lots to catch up on. I was looking back the last time we had you on just before the 2021-22 World Championships. You opened the show against Peter Hudson. What was it like playing that first game of a World Championship?
I mean, Ali Palais is just one of the best venues you can play in. And I just took it all under the like, just took it in strides. It was lovely playing up on there, and obviously I got the win, so it was even better.
Yeah, you got that win against Peter in a 5-setter, and just touching briefly on the next game, because you had to play again that night against the then reigning world champion Prix. He had some big finishes to get over the line, but how did you reflect on the whole night afterwards?
I mean, the way I played like the opening set and a bit, I was happy. I'm one set up and playing well, and obviously just knowing what he does and finishing big and punishing me, and yeah, that was it. I was happy with the performance in parts.
And the next two trips that you've had to Ali Palais, you've not gone according to plan, losing in the first round 3-2, both times being 2-0 up in sets. After last year's defeat, history repeating itself, how much soul searching was there to get over that and go again this year?
I mean, yes, the first time you think, oh, get over that. And when it happened the next year, I literally went home and I've been practicing sets because I've played longer. So instead of like the sprint marathon, and obviously after the Euros this year, I know I can play for longer periods of time, so it should be right this year.
That's interesting. So after you had that defeat, you looked at what you could do behind the scenes, practice-wise, to make sure that you were better equipped for those longer games?
Yeah, I think, it's just probably endurance. Your arm starts dropping, and it was the missus that said it. Obviously, she watching from behind, and she said it just looked a little bit more laboured after the second break when you come out and you've got the like 3 set things like one after the other. So I went back and just started throwing longer periods of time and just playing sets and getting used to it that way, I suppose.
Well, it's certainly paid off. Let's get on to this year, because even before the European Championships, it's been a year to remember for you. One of the early signs that we saw that your form was turning was when you won the 2 Euro Tour qualifiers for events 3 and 4. You had a 9-darter that day as well. That was back in February. Did you feel the same that day, things were starting to turn?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mission my sponsors with the equipment. Give me a new set of flights and stem like combo, and I tried them, and that day I'd done all that. So I was like, no, I'm not going to get changed back now. So I've never looked back, really. Yeah,
we noticed you were using the Mission Force 90. They're all in one flights. What persuaded you to switch to those?
To be fair, just I like the look of them, and more sturdier. And obviously the flights coming off and all that. And so as soon as I put them on, it just felt like my darts were going straight to and that was it, the end of it.
Yeah, it's definitely working. And those 2 Euro Tours that you qualified for, 3 and 4, a lot more people stood up and took notice of you. Wins against Michael Smith, Rob Cross, James Wade. The 100-plus averages were flying in as well on the stage. How good did that feel to bring that performance that you've had on the floor onto the stage then?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I love the European Tour. I mean, them crowds and that on the stage is brilliant. And to perform like that, it just felt like a year ago, I belong here. I'm going to stay up here.
Yeah, and the big name scalps kept coming. You beat the likes of Nathan Aspinall, Johnny Clayton, Damon Heta, and soon the World Matchplay is on the horizon. When did you start to think a debut at the Winter Gardens could be on the cards this year?
To be fair, it's probably about a week or so before. I didn't really look at the rankings and the seedings or whatever. And it was only, so probably about a week or two before I looked, and I was like, oh, I'm in quite a lot. That's it, I'm in now.
Yeah, you had to book your Blackpool B&B after that. You qualify comfortably in the end on that Pro Tour list of qualifiers. What was it like walking into the Winter Gardens and playing on that stage? Because we speak to a lot of players, it's such a special venue for darts.
Oh yeah, obviously I've never been there, but this time, yeah, as soon as I walked in there, you look at the ceiling, and I went down on the stage for about 20 minutes, a bit longer than normal. I was staring for about 10 minutes before I had a dart for a dart. It's so iconic.
Yeah, and I managed to get a ticket for that night. I was there in the crowd watching. I was dressed up as you had, your replica shirt, the arm sleeve and the goatee as well, and I was pleasantly surprised to see there was a few other fans wearing your shirts too. How much does that support from the fans mean to you, to see people in the crowd that are there supporting you?
Yeah, I mean, it always is. As soon as you look, when you get on stage, you look around and you see someone in your shirt or with a card with your name on it. It just gives you that buzz to go out there and try and perform.
And not just a debut at the Matchplay this year, you've also played the World Grand Prix for the first time, then you were back in the European Championship. But circling back to that Grand Prix, we obviously saw Mike De Decker win the title. He was a big outsider. Did you watch his run to the title? How much inspiration did that give you?
I mean, I think it was his semis and final, and he was brilliant. And obviously, as I said before in some other interviews, watching him do it, from where he was in the ranking, gives everyone else the urge to practice more, get yourself up there, because if he shows it, he can do it. Most of us can do it.
Definitely. And before the Grand Prix, Mike, he'd never been to a last 16 of a major. He goes all the way, lifts the title. Fast forward a few weeks on, you did exactly the same thing. You've got two players from outside the top 32 winning back-to-back majors. What does that say about the strength in depth in darts right now?
I mean, I think anyone, even in the 128, can win a major. They're all very good, obviously super players. It's just with us and the big boys, other than the big boys, they do it more consistently. We've all got the game for 100 averages, blah, blah, blah. But the key is consistency. And I think it shows that on that one given day, you can do it.
Definitely, and your run to the title, it couldn't have got off to a better start. 109 average in the first game of the tournament, 6-1 win against Xian Van Veen. I know you've spoken a lot about confidence in darts coming off the stage. How much confidence did that performance give you heading into the weekend?
Oh yeah, I mean, I come off literally, I was buzzing, and I just thought to myself, Michael tomorrow, I played him a few times, I've got the confidence, I could beat him, and then it sees where it goes. I had the confidence all weekend.
Yeah, you beat Michael Smith in a last leg decider. You're through to the Sunday, the final day of a major for the first time. Still some big hitters in there, Luke Humphries and Gary Anderson, but you were there too and playing well. How are you feeling about your chances?
Yeah, I mean, you turn up and it's just one game at a time. Obviously, I had Gary, which at one point he was untouchable on the floor, smashing big averages. I just thought if I could get through that one, and then my side of the draw sort of opened up. So yeah, I was hoping to get Luke in the final, if you know what I mean. I was hoping to get to the final and maybe have Luke.
Well, it was another eye-catching performance in the quarterfinals to beat Gary Anderson. Then you see off Luke Woodhouse in the semis. You're into the final. You played the first semi-final. So what was it like being the only player in that practice room watching the second semi-final going on?
I literally earphones in. I'd say to earphones in and back on the balls. I didn't really watch the second semi-final. I just knew you have to go with balls eye straight afterwards. I'd like focus, try to keep your arm warm and hopefully get your palm and go out there.
Yeah, it worked out well. The final 3-2 down, 9 straight legs in a row to beat Jermaine Watermina 11-3. As you're pulling away, the lead's getting bigger and bigger, and also that finishing line is getting closer and closer. What's going through your head?
Believe me or not, nothing. It's literally a blank. I'm off the first break, you say 3-2 down, you sit there, focus, little dark room, come back, and it's just literally one leg at a time. Just build on your lead, then obviously you nick another leg, get another leg, and it's literally just a blur. You've got to take the game shot.
And what a way to win it. The 92 finish with the two double 18s. Just describe those moments. I'm sure you've watched it back many times, but that second double 18 goes in and you are a major champion.
Yeah, I mean, double 18 this year, all 3 years cost me so much. Legs, darts, whatever. I'm just so happy that second one went in. I just couldn't believe it.
And you had your partner Tara with you in the venue. You said afterwards how much of a support she's been, and everyone behind the scenes, family, friends and sponsors who continue to back you as well.
Yeah, I mean, having her there, I mean, once she kicks me out the butt, if I'm practicing or whatever, and she just keeps me grounded, really. She's brilliant, and obviously the sponsors, I wouldn't be there without them, to be honest.
And what about the Euro Tours this year as well? We've touched on them, but that extra stage time. Last year you qualified for 2 of them. This year you've played in 11 of the 13. Did it feel like only a matter of time before it clicked in a major?
Yeah, as I say, I love them stages, and just get you say more time on them stages with the German crowds or the Swiss crowds, wherever you are. They are good little crowds. So it's a little building block for these big majors. You don't feel so intimidated on the stages.
And I know you don't do a lot of social media, but what's the phone been like since you won the title? Have you got through all the messages, and was there anyone you got a message from that surprised you? Any big names get in touch?
I haven't got through them all yet. I'm slowly getting there. To be fair, probably one of the shocks was Mr. Luke Littler. It was nice. He texted me, well done, and I was like, how did you do all this time? But yeah, it was nice to get a message from him.
Very nice. And of course you two now level on major wins. He's got one and you've got one.
Nice. Keep it like that, mate.
Well, we've got a few listener questions before we let you go. That the first one is a great name. Edhouse Mafia says, what does he think about his new cult hero status, and does he have any plans for bedazzled sleeves for those wanting to celebrate the greatest major win of all time?
You heard about the Mafia. The sleeves. I'm going to try and get some design for to memorise it. That's in the pipeline, I think. But yeah, we'll see what happens with them.
Yeah, we've had a few questions about the sleeves. FDI says, who wore the sleeve better? Alan Everson, I don't know if you know him, he's a basketball player, or Ritchie Edhouse?
Definitely me.
Yeah. And last one on the sleeves, friend of the show, Connor Scutt, he informs me that it was him who suggested to you about wearing them. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I don't want to lie, but no, he did. To be fair, he's always good. He's very good at his insight in darts, and I'll tell him about my clicking my elbow, maybe finger, and then try one of these. And I look back since. He won't let me forget it either.
Has he asked for a cut of the prize money from the European Championship as well?
He keeps asking me, yeah, if I win his night, I'll get commission.
We've got 2 more before we let you go. Jamie says, who is your best friend in darts?
I've not really got a best friend. I mean, I sit on the table with Martin Lukeman, Connor Scutt, George Killington, Lee Cox. It was just all like close-knit friends, really. And Darryl Gurney, I practiced a lot with him. Yeah, there's no best friends, there's just friends who end up.
And the last one, away from the darts, we know you walk out to Madness. George Dobson wants to know, how many Madness gigs have you been to in your life?
I actually ain't been to none, I just like the song.
Well, Ritchie, it's a pleasure to chat to you, get you back on the show, and yeah, belated congratulations on the big win in Dortmund a week or so ago, and we wish you all the best for the rest of the year.
Thank you very much. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks again to Ritchie for joining us. Now, continuing our look ahead to the Grand Slam of Darts. The draw is out for the group stage, and it is our question of the week, sponsored by Condor Darts. Get in touch with us on social media. Let us know your thoughts on this question, and we're going to discuss it now. Which group would you label as the Group of F from this year's draw?
There's a few that I think you can make a case for. I mean, Group E jumps out as a dark horse candidate to be the group of death. Obviously, with Michael Smith, Mike DeDecker, and Jermaine Waddamena all in the top 22 in averages this year in Players' Championship events, that's as good a trio as you can get. I mean, I talked about some of Michael Smith's struggles, but he's still one of the best players in the world. And Mike DeDecker just won a major not that long ago, and Jermaine Waddamena just made his first major final. And even Mensur Suljovic has been improving, but he's still down in the 80s in averages this year, even if he's getting better. Too many matches where he'll go, one match he'll play brilliantly, and the next he's struggling to crack 70. The inconsistency in Suljovic's game makes him the clear weak link there, and it's why I'm not going to say it's Group E. And you could also make a case for Group G, I think. Obviously, MVG and Gary Anderson at the top of the group, plus Ryan Joyce, who's been a very good player this year, makes it a very top-heavy group. And Noah Lim van Leuven is a player who both on the Challenge Tour and on the Women's Series, has had moments and has become getting better. But I just don't think that group is deep enough. Of course, Ando coming off that big win against MVG in Dortmund a couple weeks ago, will be coming in wanting to top this group. But there's too many question marks with all four of those players. And that leads me to the last group alphabetically, Group H. And I think, to me, this is the group of death, because I think you can make a case not just for all of these players winning it, but you can make a case for all of these players being able to get through to the semifinals if they're able to play their best stuff over the first part of the week, this upcoming weekend, and then the first part of the week. Starting with the seed, Stephen Bunting, he equaled the all-time record this year in losing 6 finals on the Pro Tour. Luke Humphrey set the record last year in 2023. A few players have lost 5 before. Bunting lost 6 this year. Didn't win a title. Somehow didn't win a title, but at least on Pro Tour events. But a record equaling 6 finals defeats is just absurd. 20% of the time winning through to the final, 3 days in a row 1 week, making it through to the final, losing each time. He is playing at a very, very high level. But so is Josh Rock. 3 Pro Tour titles, which includes a Euro Tour title, 5 finals, after what was a disappointing year last year. It wasn't a bad year, but it was certainly not a great year. It was a noticeable decrease off of his first year. He's bounced back this year in a big way. He has not had success on television. He's lost in the first round of every major since the UK Open. And if he doesn't get out of the group stage here, that'll be the same. But he's getting better and better. He won the most recent Players Championship event to close the season. Then we come down to Jean Van Veen, the only player in this field who hasn't won an event, but he's made a Euro Tour final. He made the semifinals of the European Championship. He's been knocking on every door he can find over the past year and a half, 2 years. It's going to happen at some point. And he's just really an incredible player who's started this season slowly, but playing better in the back half of the year. And then finally, Vessel Nijman, 2 Pro Tour finals this year, 7 titles on the development tour. What a group of 4 players this is. And I didn't even go through their Players Championship averages this year. Bunting is 6th, Rock is 16th, Van Veen is 34th, and Nijman is 4th. So you have 2 of the top 6, 3 of the top 16, and the odd one out just made a semifinal in a major championship a couple weeks ago. That's the group of death. And if you're saying something else, Alex, you're wrong.
Oh God, the pressure's on now. I think you've looked at my notes there, because as soon as I saw the draw, I was fixed to that last group as well, Group H, and a lot of our listeners as well are going the same. The poll on Twitter at the moment is going to be open for a few more days, so go and have your say. But our listeners, 10% going with B, 13% going with D, 71% going with Group H, and other is 6%. A few of our listeners getting in touch. Gary Ormiston saying C or D looks tasty. Stevie K saying H, but D a close second. And yeah, I've got to go with that Group H as well. Stephen Bunting, Josh Rock, Gian Van Veen and Wessel Nijman. Good luck picking 2 from that 4 to go through to the last 16. And the other 2 groups that I put on the poll there, B and D, I think you can make a decent case for those as well. Group B, Danny Noppert is the seed in that group, and this time last week wasn't even in the Grand Slam, but done well to win through those tour card qualifiers on Friday, and we've already spoken about it, some of the other big hitters who were unsuccessful in those qualifiers. And then you've got Martin Schindler and Cameron Menzies, Bo Greaves. I think out of all the groups, you could show me the final standings in that group in any order, and I don't think it would surprise me too much. Noppert, yes, he's going to be the favourite. Recently had that run to the semi-finals of the European Championship. He was a favourite to win that tournament as well at some point. But the other 3, very dangerous as well. Martin Schindler, 2 Euro Tour titles this year. Menzies only just won his first senior title in the PDC on the floor. We're waiting for him to click on the TV now. It could happen this week. And Bo Greaves, so close to topping her group on debut last year at the Grand Slam, and arguably just as difficult, if not more difficult, the group that she had 12 months ago with Nathan Aspinall, Damon Heta and Ricardo Pietrexco to contend with. So, yeah, I think you could tell me that Bo tops that group with Menzies second, and I'd go, yeah, I can see that being a possible outcome. Bo could go 3 from 3, that short race to 5 legs. I think that helps. She's used to playing the shorter formats, and we have seen the levels that she can produce. Her A game is going to be more than a handful for anyone she comes up against. And Group D, Dave Chisnell, Ross Smith, Ritchie Edhouse and Connor Scutt. The last two are two guests going up against each other at some point over the next few days, Ritchie and Connor. And both are going to probably go into it with more confidence than Dave Chisnell and Ross Smith. And to borrow Rod Studd's favourite word in the dictionary, momentum as well. Ritchie, the newest major winner. Connor, the Challenge Tour champion. The other two, Ross Smith, yes, he's had a major a couple of years ago. Chizzy's still waiting for that first one. But they're going to be the two favourites. More stage pedigree, but Ritchie riding the crest of a wave. How does he follow Dortmund and Connor? Not a lot of stage experience, but played a lot of darts this year and won a lot of games as well. But after saying all that, I almost changed my mind, but I'm going to stick with that Group H as my group of death. Bunting, Rock, Van Veen, Nyman. Yeah, 4 excellent players. Good luck picking the two that are going to go through.
Now, we talked about the groups as a whole, but let's talk for a second about the 8 seeds. Which of those 8 seeds do you think has the toughest draw? And on the flip side, of the 8 players in Pool D, the outsiders pool, who do you fancy to go the furthest?
Well, immediately I want to say Stephen Bunting for the seeds part of that, because it makes sense, doesn't it? We've just said that he's in the group of death. He's got 3 very tough games in Rock, Van Veen and Nyman, and he can only afford to lose one of them. Okay, some cases we've seen players go through with 1 win from 3 games in the Grand Slam, but it's not very often. This is the 18th edition of the Grand Slam, so 17 years, 8 groups, and I did do the maths earlier for this, 136 groups, only 12 times has a player gone through with 2 points, and the last time that happened, 2020, Ian White and Adam Hunt. 2017, that was a funny year. 3 of the 8 groups, there was a player that went through with 1 win, Steve Lennon, Darren Webster and Dave Chisnell. Well done if you got all them at home as well. But yeah, this year I think that could happen again, and Bunting, he has got it tough. The other group of death contenders, we mentioned the seeds in those groups, Noppert in B, Chisnell in D, and I'll throw out Group E as well. We've already spoken about him, but Michael Smith in there with Mike Dedeker and Jermaine Watamina. Also Mensah Suljovic, I know he's lower down in the rankings these days, used to be a top 10, top 8 player, now down towards the bottom end of the top 64, but as we've seen at the World Cup in particular this year, that's how he got to this event, getting to the final with Roby John Rodriguez. You can never write Mensah off, and you know what, I'll go with Noppert for this one. I think, as I mentioned, he's got Bo Greaves first up, then Schindler or Menzies, and then the other one is other. That's, you know, a real tough run of games there. And as for which of the 8 lowest ranked players from that pot D can go the furthest, I'm going to double down on Bo Greaves for this one. I think she makes it through to the last 16, but having said that, I think there's another player from that pool of players who's going to go a little bit further in the competition, and it's a bit of a left field pick, this one. If you'd have said his name maybe 12 months ago when he was winning all the seniors events on TV, you'd have not been as surprised. But I think he's not had as much success in the seniors this year on TV, but by his standards, a quietly impressive 2024, top the CDC rankings, won the Continental Cup, and that's Leonard Gates. Last year, we all remember, the Continental Cup champion Stowe Bunce made the quarterfinals on his debut, on his TV debut as well. It wouldn't be surprising, but I think Leonard Gates, he's going to make it through his group, and I think he's going to cause an upset whoever he comes up against in the last 16 before going out to Rob Cross in the quarterfinals.
I think some good picks there. I'll start, as like you did, with the hardest for the seeds, and some of that we've already, talked about when we went through the group of death. I mean, in and of itself, having been drawn into Group H, I think gives Stephen Bunting a very difficult task here. But he's not the only one who I think has a hard draw. Dimitri Vandenberg getting Luke Littler in and of itself is a brutal ask, because Littler, obviously, if we were to ask who are the 8 seeds in terms of the 8 best players in this field, or the 8 most likely players in this field, the question isn't whether Luke Littler would be one of the seeds. It would be whether he's the number 1 or the number 2 seed in that ranking. But he's not yet high enough in the rankings. He didn't miss out by that much in the end, compared to where he started the year. But he'll be a seed next year, most likely. But he's not there yet. That makes it a tough tough draw for Dimitri Van den Berg, because even if you get through your group, even if you win another match, it's likely that the quarterfinal matchup will be against Luke Littler in that position, and Littler, especially over a best of 31 leg match, will be the heavy favorite in that one. And I'll also mention, Dave Chisnell getting Ritchie Edhouse in Edhouse's first tournament as a major champion, especially on the poor form that Chizzy's been on television this year. I think that's a hard draw for him. And, you mentioned it as well when going through the potential groups of death, Danny Noppert. I didn't pick that as my group of death because I think it's 4 very good players and there's 4 very evenly matched players, but I just feel like Group H was such a level above for each of those players on current form. There's still inconsistencies. Noppert's playing better than he was earlier in the year. Obviously, Schindler's won 2 Euro Tour titles this year, becoming the first German player ever to win 2 Euro Tour titles and only the 9th player ever to win 2 Euro Tour titles in a single season. But overall, I think there's more of a consistency at a high level in Group H. But the players in Group B are all at a very similar level. That's not even getting to Bo Greaves or Cameron Menzies, and Bo Greaves might be playing her best darts of the year, as is Cameron Menzies. So I think that's right up there for hardest draw for a seed. As far as who goes the furthest of the players from Pool D, and for those who don't know, those players are Mensur Suljovic, Vessel Nyman, Roby John Rodriguez, Connor Scutt, Leonard Gates, Bo Greaves, Lawrence Iligan, and Noah Lynn van Leuven. I mean, I think you can make a case for most of them, and that's a great sign for the PDC, considering most of these are the regional qualifiers or the development challenge tour players that we're talking about. It makes a great sign for the PDC that those players, you can make a good case to be able to go far. You mentioned Suljovic. I'll mention him as well. I think he is improving after a long decline, and what seemed like earlier this year would be his last year on tour. He said that next year would be his last year, but it wasn't looking like he was going to have a tour card. And now looks like there's a very good chance he'll have a tour card next year because of his improvement. And even though that is a very difficult group, and one that I think should be in that contention for group of death, there's question marks with, especially over a shorter format with some of those players. And as I said earlier, Mensur Suljovic has put together some really good matches. He's not backed them up, or he's backed them up a couple of times and then absolutely falls off the face of the planet in a match. But all he has to do is most likely is put together 2 good matches about 100 average, and that might be enough. And he can do that, even if the other match is 74 and a 5-0 loss. Connor Scutt, another player that you mentioned, I think that one speaks for itself, especially with the difficulties that Chizzy's had on television. Leonard Gates, another player you mentioned, I have as well. And I'll add one more that I don't think you mentioned. That's Lawrence Iligan. I assume everyone assumed that I was gonna, or expected that I would say him. I've been saying for some time that we are on the cusp of having a breakthrough from a Filipino player. And this year has moved that, I think, even closer with the absolute dominance of the Philippines in the Asian Tour this year. Alex Toilo, for a while, was looking like he would make the finals of pretty much every event. He did dip off a little at the end of the year, and he did win the Asian championships, but he's going to be at the World Championships and still is a very good player. But Iligan won 2 events this year in an ever-increasing Asian Tour and won the Asian Championship. And yes, he's in the group with Luke Littler, but I think he can beat Dimitri Van den Berg. I think he can beat Keane Barry. Over best of 9 legs, anything can happen, even against Luke Littler. I think this is a sneaky opportunity for Iligan to finally make his mark in the PDC. It's going to happen sooner or later, and I'm just going to keep picking it until it does.
Yeah, we'd all love to see Lawrence have a big run on TV in the PDC. Maybe it comes next week. Well, we're going to be back in a moment to look back at the final weekend of the Challenge Tour, also touch on the draw for Lakeside. But before we do, we're going to bring in our last couple of guests. First, you're going to hear from Jack Milner from Kwiff. He's going to talk us through the Weekly Dartscast Parlay for the Grand Slam. And then you can hear from the winner of this year's Challenge Tour Order of Merit, Connor Scutt. I'm pleased to say we're joined once again by Jack Milner from Kwiff. Jack, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, pal. How's yourself?
Yeah, doing good, thank you. Great to get you back on as always. Looking ahead to the big TV tournaments and the next one just around the corner, the Grand Slam of Darts starting this weekend, and we'll kick things off as we always do with our weekly Dartscast Parlay. Hopefully get a winner for you guys this week. My tips, I've gone with James Wade and Mike the Decker to win their games on Saturday. Burton, he's gone with one of our guests, Connor Scutt, and the world number one, Luke Humphries. Jack, who are your two picks, and what does that work out as a parlay altogether?
I mean, God love Dave Chisnell. He's been having a bit of a bad back, and I've finally deserted him. So we'll tip up a man, Connor Scutt, against him. We'll sit there in the 6th. Well, for my two, Leonard Gates, I met him at last year's Lakeside. He's a really nice guy. But I think Rob Cross has got a brilliant half of the draw. I think he's a good bet around 12-14 for the outright. Cross is 2-7 to beat Leonard Gates. I think on the Saturday. And the other one I like is, we're going to put another Lakeside member. We're going to put Bo Greaves up, who I thought dazzled last year. She narrowly missed out on getting through the group stages, but she's got Danny Noppert in the opening round. And I think 6-4 for Bo Greaves to beat the Dutchman is just a little bit too big for my liking. Bo and Rob Cross, and if you put the 6 of them, which I think is Scutt, Greaves, Cross, Wade, Humphries and Decker in a 6-fold, it pays a handsome 20-1 with Kwiff, and obviously there's a good chance that might get supercharged and win a lot more. So 6 for the 6-4 pays 20-1, and it's Bo Greaves and Rob Cross for me.
There we go. And just looking at the outrights on Kwiff at the moment, at the time of recording, Luke Humphries, the reigning champion, 3.2, Luke Littler 4.0. Obviously they're always going to be the favourites this year, but what about some of the other players that are in the field, and particularly our two guests on the show this week? We mentioned him, Connor Scutt, but also Ritchie Edhouse, who was the winner of the last major just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, Ritchie Edhouse, winner of the European Championships over in Germany. Big prize, big result for the bookmakers. I think he's 150-1, and he was pretty much unfancied throughout. If you look at the prices, he's pretty much odds against all through the quarter, semis and the final. So good result for the bookmakers. He's 50-1 for a peak performance this week in Wolverhampton, and Connor Scutt is 125-1. I think a little bit of 150s if you shop around. It's a really nice half of the draw for Scutt if he can get Pat Chizzy in the opening the group. I think if you look at the way the draws worked out, I think that side will do much better. I think that's why Rob Cross is probably shorter than he probably should be, but Humphries is the man they've all got to beat. More and more players seem to, the old guard are coming out and saying he's still not getting the respect he deserves. Luke Humphries, finalist in the Grand Prix against Mike the Decker. The Decker, incidentally, is 22.7, the same price as a Ross Smith, who will be looking to take the scalp of Mr. Edhouse in the opening group stage. But for me, I do like Humphries. I think he's very unfashionable, but 3.2 is probably a little bit bigger. I think Littler is still potentially underpriced for his name and reputation. And the one I do like at the price is Gary Anderson. I think Gary is he's still got a little bit of a point to prove. I know he says he just wants to turn up and play darts with his friends and blah, blah, blah. I think Gary still wants one more big TV major. And if you look at the longevity of, say, a Taylor or a Barney, I think Gary, he's not, I know All Father Time is knocking a little bit, but he's still a fantastic darts player. And provided you can get him on song, I think Gary Anderson is 7.8 for one last hurrah for the Flying Scotsman. And that's where my money will be going.
Yeah, Gary's always said the Grand Slam is his favourite tournament, yet to lift that trophy, so we'll see if he can do it next week. And before we let you go, Jack, obviously it's a big month of darts. We've got the Grand Slam, we've got the Players' Championship finals, and another event that you guys at Kwiff are going to be involved in again is the Lakeside coming up at the end of the month.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can record live on location. We've got in the process of building the Kwiff zone, so if you come down to the Lakeside, especially the first 3 or 4 days, you can catch me there giving out a few free bets and a few bits and pieces, courtesy of the fine personnel there, the WDF and the Lakeside. But looking forward to it. I think the draw was either done yesterday or it's in the process of being worked out. But we've got a good set of players down. I know Neil Duff is chomping at the bit to reclaim the title. He lost last year, 2022 World Champion, and Bo Greaves is, let's be honest, she's probably already nailed on. She can take home the winner's check already. But yeah, looking forward to it. Again, second time there, coming up in a few weeks' time. And I look forward to meet yourself for a pint at the Kwiff zone.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And we have to remind our listeners, as always, if you are having a flutter, do go and check out the Kwiff website or the Kwiff app. As you mentioned, a chance to supercharge your odds. You've got to be 18 plus. T's and C's apply. Please gamble responsibly. BeGambleAware.org. And Jack, appreciate the time as always, and we look forward to chatting ahead of Minehead, and then we'll be chatting at Lakeside in a few weeks' time as well.
Our compliance team will love you for that. 18 plus, be gamble responsibly, and hopefully we'll see you all very soon. But yeah, looking forward to the Kwiff zone.
I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the 2024 Challenge Tour Order of Merit winner, Connor Scutt. Thanks for the time again, Connor. How are you doing?
I'm all good. It's quite nice to be the Challenge Tour winner, to be fair.
Yeah, great achievement, and only one place to start, and that is with this past weekend in Leicester. Sunday afternoon, you secured top spot on the Challenge Tour. You've got your tour card back. You go into the Grand Slam this weekend. What do those achievements mean to you?
It means a lot. I mean, the Grand Slam, from a darts fan perspective, was always my favourite one to watch years ago, so it's quite nice to be involved in it now.
And we'll come back to the weekend just gone later, but let's circle back when we last had you on the show. It was just after the 4th Challenge Tour weekend. You won a title, you moved to the top. That was in mid-August. We've only just had that 5th weekend. You've obviously played a lot of darts in between, so did that help take your mind off that position that you had in the Challenge Tour?
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of like a rest for it. Obviously, making the top spot meant I can get into all of the Pro Tours and all that good stuff. So my main focus has been on the Pro Tours, really, and I didn't really give the Challenge Tour a second thought until I started playing it again. Like, it didn't really cross my mind for, well, the couple of months that I was waiting to play in those events. It didn't really cross my mind too much.
Yeah, you've been busy in between. A few weeks after we last spoke, you made another Pro Tour final, your second one. First one without a tour card, though, and after you get past Christian Kist with a 104 average in the semis, it's your idol Gary Anderson in the final. The result didn't go your way, but what was it like getting to play Gary in a final?
Very, very nice. He had some very nice words to say after the final as well, which was appreciated. He's a gent. He is an absolute gent.
And one event we've got to talk about is the WDF World Masters. You went out to Budapest for the WDF's event last month, and it was quite the eventful week for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange one, having the decider, the strange decider. That was one for the books. That's a story to remember, I guess.
Yeah, let's talk about that. The tournament starts with a round robin. You win 2 games, lose 2 games. You then leave the venue. I assume at that point you think you're probably out and you haven't qualified for the knockouts?
Yes, I was in Tesco's doing some shopping. Got a nice lasagna to have in the evening. And luckily we received a phone call from Nick Rolls, and we had to get back to the venue as soon as possible to play a decider.
Did you get to finish your shopping, or did you have to put it down and leave straight away?
Oh no! We the shopping was finished by the time we got the phone call, which is very handy. Luckily, there is taxis absolutely everywhere in Budapest, so it wasn't too difficult to get back to the venue either.
Excellent. Yeah, you find out in Tesco that there's a 3-player tie in your group. You need to play in a tiebreaker. When you get that call from Nick Rolls, what was your first reaction? Could you believe it?
No, not really. I was like, it's quite nice to get a second chance. I've got to try and make the most of it. My first 3 darts when I got back to the venue was a 180 on the practice board as well, which is quite funny.
Yeah, we've had 9 dart shootouts before in the Grand Slam and the Modus Super Series, but you're back in the venue playing one leg of 501 between 3 players. It's the first 2 to finish the leg that go through. I believe it was played with virtually no one in the room as well. So how tense was that leg?
Extremely tense. Extremely tense. It was. I think everybody seems nervous, which obviously nerves catch in those sort of environments and those sort of situations. I think I would have much rather a 9-dart shootout.
Well, you win the leg to make it through to the knockouts, and it looked like you were making the most of that reprieve. 106, 110 averages, they help you get through to the semi-finals, but it's Kai Gotthard who puts you out in a last leg decider after you missed the match starts. Was that one of the toughest defeats you've had to deal with, being so close to the final?
I didn't realise how many match starts I'd missed until someone told me after. It was, I think it might have been Bunting messaging me, and he said 7 match starts sort of thing, but I got over it fairly quickly because it wasn't, I think I had a Pro Tour to go to a couple of days later, so I didn't really have much time to dwell on it, and I think I made the quarterfinals of that Pro Tour shortly after, I think.
Yeah, you've been back to the Pro Tour since then. It was the Pro Tour last week as well, the last 2 Players' Championships of the season. You were there as a top-up player. The second of those events, you end up losing with a 110 average to Andrew Gilding in the first round. For me, I'm happy if I average over 45, so I can't imagine what it must feel like to come off a game, average 110 and not win. So without swearing, what's that like?
It's an experience. To be fair, I made a few mistakes in that game. I think I missed 5 darts at 32, I want to say, which might have changed the game. I also missed a 96 checkout. So there's a couple of little things in that I could have done a bit better, but it was a very high, I think that's probably the highest standard game I've been involved in where both players play well, I think.
Yeah, it looked like a great game, and those 2 Pro Tours on the Wednesday and the Thursday, the Challenge Tour didn't start up again until the Saturday. So what did you get up to on the Friday? We know the Grand Slam qualifiers were going on, but for you, were you messaging Wesley Placey or Christian Kist about finding somewhere for a chuck to get ready for the Saturday?
Not quite, no. I actually didn't pick up a dart on Friday because I wasn't feeling too well, but my wife come up sort of late afternoonish, and we went for a little meal. We had a little meal in Frankie and Benny's, and I thought that was a great way to prepare for the next day, just nice and chilled out.
Very nice. Well, let's get on to the weekend then. After the first 2 events on the Saturday, you and Wesley still only separated by just the £50. Walking back into the venue on the Sunday, did it feel any different knowing that the season all came down to that final day?
I wouldn't say it felt different. I was a little bit gutted when I see who I had first round. So I was like, okay, this is gonna be a difficult day. You can get much nicer draws than John Henderson in a first round, that's for sure. Because that was a bit ridiculous. More reason why I think the Challenge Tour should be seeded, but hey ho. But yeah, obviously I played Hendo, and then I worked out where my sort of throw had been going wrong from the previous day. My middle finger wasn't on my dart properly, and as soon as I sorted that out, I started averaging in the hundreds again. I think I played, I can't remember who I played after John, but I know I played Pilgrim and averaged 104, played Merckx and averaged 100, and I might have had another 100 in there somewhere, but I found my feet a lot better.
Yeah, we definitely saw that, and I was following the results on Dart Connect on the Sunday. Sadly, I didn't film any Matthew Kiernan-like reaction videos, but during that first event, Wesley would win a game and go top. You'd win a game and go top again. I don't know if you ever watched the Chuckle Brothers growing up. It felt like you two were doing the old to me to you with that top spot at one point.
I didn't even realise that it was swapping around so much. I saw that we were both in sort of like the same stages of the event, but I think once I'd made the final, I thought to myself, right, that's like the lead that I needed, because obviously we went into the Sunday and I was only £50 in the lead again. So I was like, okay, I've got to do something in this first one. Luckily I made the final, so I give myself a little bit of ground to work with.
Yeah, you make that final of that first event on Sunday. Then the last event, it all seemed to fall into place rather quickly. Wesley Placey goes out, I think just after you'd started your game with Dale Pilgrim, and then 10 minutes...
It was on the board next to me. I was mid-game with Pilgrim after Wesley lost.
So how do you react to that, knowing that result has secured the tour card?
I still wanted to beat Pilgrim, because obviously Kiss could have had a shot at winning the event and then coming top and nicking the Grand Slam spot.
Yeah, and then...
I was very much still trying to concentrate. Obviously, Pilgrim had a great last leg. I think it was an 11 or 12 dart leg to end up beating me. And then I come off the board and noticed that Christian had lost as well. So it all sort of fell into place all very quickly after that game with Pilgrim.
Yeah, I think Christian lost, and then probably about a minute or so later you lost that game to Daryl. So top spot, the tour card, the Grand Slam, everything was wrapped up. Have you ever been happier so soon after losing a game before?
No. It was quite a wave of emotion, to be fair. I didn't cry though.
Oh.
I didn't cry. I nearly did. Got a little bit choky, but I didn't full blown cry like I did when I won my card at Q School that year.
But it obviously still, this means a lot to you, doesn't it? You've been a top player with a tour card, and obviously this year without one, but to have that tour card back for the next 2 years at least, that's a big thing for you, isn't it?
It's amazing. I've always been one of them players that puts in an awful lot of hard work, so when it pays off, it's a very nice moment when it does so.
Definitely, and it's a debut for you at the Grand Slam this weekend. We spoke with Ritchie Edhouse yesterday before the draw was made. We mentioned it was you that got him onto wearing the arm sleeve, and now you two have been drawn in the same group. Just a word on Ritchie's year, because I know you hang out with him on the tour. What a year he's had, and he's a major winner now as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's been doing amazingly. It's not a massive shock to people that know him well, because obviously we've all played against him locally and practiced with him in practice games before tournaments start and stuff like that. So it's no real surprise that he had that level in him. But it's nice to see it come out. It's nice when it happens to a mate. It is.
Yeah, and the draw's out. Group H, a lot of people are calling the group of death, but we've got to give a mention to your group as well. You and Ritchie. You've also got Dave Chisnell and Ross Smith, one of the toughest groups, but I'm sure you're relishing that. What was your reaction when you saw the draw?
My first reaction was there's going to be a lot of 180s in that group. That was my first thought. So obviously Ritchie hits a lot, Chizzy hits a lot, and so does Ross Smith. So I was thinking, I've hit a few this year, so I think it should be quite a big 180 group.
Yeah, we're looking forward to watching it, and finishing top of the Challenge Tour. That would usually get you a spot at Ali Pali as well, but you've qualified via the Pro Tour, given how well you've done as a top-up player this year. When we last had you on, we asked you whether you choose Ali Pali or Lakeside. You said no comment. You have chosen the PDC World Championships now. So Sean Rafferty, one of our listeners, wants to know, when exactly did you decide you were choosing Ali Pali over Lakeside?
I think I let Nick know the Monday before Challenge Tours. So it wasn't that long ago that the decision was made concrete. But the WDF boys have been extremely supportive. When I told Nick, he messaged me straight away saying, good luck, I wish you all the best, that sort of stuff. So it was really nice to see how supportive they all were of my decision. There was no one that was unhappy or anything like that. They were like the boys from the WDF were all very supportive of the decision, which is good.
Right.
No bad blood is nice.
Yes, nice to hear. And how difficult was that decision to make? Because I know you felt like you had unfinished business at Lakeside, but at the same time there's a lot of money on offer in the PDC, and you've also got a chance to crack that top 64 with a good run in a major before the end of the season. And if you could do that, that would give you an even bigger platform to build on next year. Yeah,
I think that was the main line of thinking. Less about the money differences, more about the cracking the top 64, because that would be a massive head start on next year. And I'm in all the majors up till the end of the year now, so I've got sort of 3 bites at the cherry to do something. Obviously there's no pressure because I'm guaranteed my tour card anyway, but it would be nice to crack that top 64 just to take a bit of pressure off of year one.
Definitely, and Wesley not in the Grand Slam, he's in the other 2. He's got a chance of doing the same thing. We know you're a connoisseur of darts, so now you're not going to the Lakeside. Who do you make as the favourite to win the men's event?
I don't know if Van Ski is going to do a West Europe qualifier for Ali Pali or not, is he? I don't know. Is the West Europe qualifier gone for Ali Pali yet?
No, I think that is coming up in a couple of weeks, and you'd assume he'd be going to that as well.
I'd assume so, but Jimmy's playing some really good stuff. I don't think that you can discount Mr. Edgar's chances either, because I think he's been doing a lot of things right at a lot of times. Like, he's building himself up into these big events, and one game a day will suit him perfectly because of the injury problem. There's quite a few players I think can win it. it's not cut and dry, that's for sure. Obviously, Neil Duff, he's been there and done it before. I'd say off the top of my head, it'll be Vansky, Edgar, Duff. And I cannot pick between those off the top of my head.
No, it's going to be interesting to follow. And just two more before we let you go. You're back on the PDC Tour fully next year. Harry has asked, what are your aims over these next 2 years? Is it to win a ranking title?
Oh, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Well, I've done things a bit strangely, like. So in the PDC, like in the Pro Tour when I had my card before, I made 2 semi-finals before I made my first final. And now I've made 2 finals, so hopefully that will mean 2 finals and then win one next time in the final, hopefully. So it would be nice to have a senior title under my belt. It would. It's a shame I can't turn back the time and try and win a development tour, really. Because I think I've won an event in every system I've been in, other than the development tour now and Pro Tour. So I think I've won. Yeah. So we got WDF Challenge Tour. So we can't do development tour. So hopefully Pro Tour will be the next one. It would be very nice. Or do a Ritchie and just win a major.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout. That could come in the next few weeks. Well, we know averages are just a guide, but last year you averaged 91 in the Players' Championship, 63rd on the list. This year as a top-up player from the Challenge Tour, you've averaged 94, close to 95, 26th on the list. Do you feel better equipped now heading into next year, your second run with that tour card?
Definitely. I feel a lot more comfortable in the room now. I don't feel out of place. I know I've got a decent game to sort of combat most opponents. So hopefully I won't lose my card for a little while now.
Well, Connor, it's always great to catch up with you. Congratulations on winning the Challenge Tour, and we wish you all the best for the Grand Slam, Minehead, Ali Pali and everything else that's going to come next year as well.
Lovely. Thank you very much, mate.
Thanks again to Jack and Connor for joining us. Now we'll finish up the show with a look ahead to the Lakeside. We've just had the draw, but before we do that, let's look back at the Challenge Tour. Come to an end at the weekend in Leicester. Connor Scutt top in the pile, but it's him and Wesley Placier, as things stand, that are going to take the tour cards unless they can break the top 64 by the end of the season. But how do you think they're going to fare next year with their tour cards?
Yeah, and that's an important unless, because it's not out of the realm of possibility. And Wesley Placier, if he had been able to top the order of merit for the Challenge Tour, he would have been in the Grand Slam. That would have almost made him favored too. And there's also something I'll come on to in a second about a lot of his first round losses, which each first round loss in Players' Championship events means you don't win £1,000, which is the minimum you get for if you get out of the first round on a given day. He's left a lot of money on the table this year, but it's still not impossible that he'll get on the top 64. It's not impossible that Connor Scutt will get in the top 64. But as far as what to expect from them next year, a lot. More so than almost ever before for the Challenge Tour winners, which isn't to say that they're not usually having high expectations. They do, and they often deliver. Remember, Rob Cross won through the Challenge Tour in 2016 to be on the tour in 2017, and he only went on to win 4 titles, including the World Championship the following year. And the player who joined him through the Challenge Tour order merit, just some guy named Ryan Searle, who's also now in and out of the top 16 in the world. The Challenge Tour is a very, very good stepping stone, but I think these two players, in terms of what we've seen them do on the Challenge Tour and what we've seen them do off the Challenge Tour, have different expectations. And part of Connor Scutt's is because he made a Pro Tour final last year when he was on the tour full time before dropping off, barely dropping off, but just missing out on the top 64. And this year, he's only managed to do that anyway, despite not having a tour card, despite missing 7 events, including most of the early ones. He still made it through to another final. He's 26th in averages in Players' Championship events this year. And that's improving. Over his last 24 matches, 18 of them, that's fully 3/4 of his last 24 matches, starting with that run to the final in Players' Championship 22, that have been above his already very good seasonal average. So he's 26th in averages, but playing for the last 2 months or month and a half at a much higher standard. Wesley Pleisier, it's a bit in the opposite direction, but it's still not been that he's been terrible. He's 24th in averages, but only in 9 of his last 24 has he been able to break his seasonal averages. I'll put another way, in 15 of those he's been below. Most of them have been relatively close, but it has been definitely a little bit of a drop in his performance, and certainly a drop in his consistency. And yeah, he has 3 finals, including a title, but in 12 of his 22 events, he went out in the first round in the Players' Championship events, compared to only 7 for Connor Scutt. But there's an explanation, I think, for some of that. Of those 12 events where he went out first round, in 8 of them, his opponent averaged at least 98. So only 4 times did he go out to someone averaging under 98, and never was that to someone averaging under 90. So he's gotten a bit of bad luck this year. He's also definitely not playing as consistently as earlier in the year, despite having that title recently. But I think maybe some of that has been thinking about trying to get into the top 64. Maybe that is just playing a little bit too much because he's been playing every Players' Championship event. He's been playing every Challenge Tour weekend. He's been playing some events over in the WDF. He's been playing a lot. Maybe there's just been a little fatigue dipping in. But the expectation for him has to be high, because considering he'll be coming in with a title and 3 finals this past year on the Pro Tour level. I think for both of them, the World Championships is the minimal goal next year, even if the field doesn't expand. Obviously, if it expands, that becomes almost like given that they have to get there. I think making sure they get to Minehead at the back end of the year, trying to at least put themselves in that position to get to another televised event, I think that's the goal. And for both of them, it's to win a title. One of them has already done it this year. The other has made a final each of the last 2 years. There are very high expectations for these two, more than almost ever coming through the Challenge Tour. And that's because they've already done so much, both this year and in the past, to prove that they are better than the Challenge Tour.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And we had a similar question about the 2 players that won tour cards via the development tour a little while ago now, Nico Springer and Sebastian Białecki. We both felt that they're going to fare pretty well next year on the tour, and for both of them, it's going to be their first time with tour cards. These 2, though, from the Challenge Tour as things stand, Connor Scutt and Wesley Pleisier. Connor, he lost his tour card at the end of last year. Wesley somehow never had a tour card before, but he has been in that pool of players that a lot of people have backed at Q School and have put in that mix of the best players currently without a tour card. And as you say, given how well they've both done on the Pro Tour this year, they're going to go into next year with a lot of confidence and form behind them, aren't they? And it just shows, really, doesn't it? Top up players from the Challenge Tour onto the Pro Tours this year, and they've qualified for the World Championship via that Pro Tour list. And it kind of feels like for both of them, they have been unofficial tour card holders this year because they have played it in so many events and done well. And I guess that's probably one of the sticking points to this question is, yes, they've both had a great 2024 on the Pro Tour without those tour cards, both qualified for Ali Pali. And Wesley, in his case, 3 finals, including 2 on back-to-back days, won a title. Connor made a final as well. But it's that going from a top-up player from the Challenge Tour to then being a tour card holder, and it's less of a free run. You are going into events with that tour card and with the end goal of being in the top 64 at the end of the 2 years, and then every subsequent year after that, you've got to stay in there to keep your card. It's a constant rat race amongst the 128, your fellow tour card holders, to stay on the tour and constantly jostling for positions. And that brings a lot more pressure, I think. And Connor, as I say, he's had experience with his tour card. Wesley, going to be a new experience for him. But something we also need to take into consideration, and we mentioned it in the question as well, is yes, they are going to be tour card holders for 2025, but is it going to be with a 2-year tour card from the Challenge Tour, or are they going to have that 1-year card? Are they going to make it into that top 64? And both have got an outside chance of doing it. Wesley at the moment, he looks the stronger of the 2 to do it. He's not in the Grand Slam, but he is going to be going to Minehead and Ali Pali with a chance to jump those rankings. Connor's case, he's got 3 bites of the cherry. He's got the Grand Slam and he's got the other 2 as well. So he's definitely in with a shout. And maybe that could be a factor as well going into next year. If they do get that top 60, if they do get that top 64, that is a bonus. But imagine they get very close, perhaps maybe one win off, just miss out. How do they deal with that disappointment and go back to 0 on the rankings? So yes, as much as it is a free hit, these events coming up to try and get into that top 64, it's not been done many times before. It is also a big opportunity for them to really lay down the foundations for their tour card next year, and potentially, instead of looking to get that top 64 in 2 years, it could be, can they break into the top 50, top 40 next year and make some of those other majors like the Matchplay and the Grand Prix? So lots to play for even before they get that tour card.
Well, speaking of lots to play for, there's also lots to play for over in the WDF, as the Lakeside is coming up in a few weeks, and the draw was made yesterday, Tuesday, as of when we're recording. What stands out for you most from both the men's and the ladies' draw for the WDF World Championships?
Well, when we last spoke about Lakeside, I think we were looking at the men's lineup, trying to pick out a favourite, and two of the names at the top of our list, we've just spoke about them actually, Wesley Placier and Connor Scutt, both opt in for Ali Pali instead of Lakeside, so they're out of the reckoning for this. Jimmy Van Schie, the new WDF men's number one, the second seed for Lakeside, probably goes in now as that men's favourite in that bottom half of the draw. The top half of the draw, I was looking at the list of names yesterday, looking at the draw, and just one World Championship quarter final between those 24 players. That was Brian Roman back in 2022, the first World Championships to be held by the WDF. So that screams opportunity for me and for a lot of the players to make their mark on this stage, make a quarter final. Two of them are going to be in the semi-final, one of them is going to be in the final, and by that point they'll have picked up 4, possibly 5 wins that week, and they'll fancy the job of going all the way. So who's that going to be? I'm glad we've got a few more weeks before the event, before we preview the tournament, to have a little think about that. But the bottom half, you've got the 2022 champion Neil Duff. I think he goes in as the second favourite after Jimmy Van Schie in that half of the draw. Paul Lim, I think he was the one that a lot of people were looking at when the draw come out. Who has he got? Moreno Blom is his first game, the winner to play Kai Fan Lung in the second round. 70 years old, 34 years after he hit that 9 darter at Lakeside, going back there. I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on. As for the ladies' draw, I think one of the big talking points going into the draw was who was Bo Greaves going to get first up as she goes for that hat-trick of world titles, and it's going to be either Amanda Locke from Australia or Kirsty Vinnakainen. And Amanda, I'll be honest, don't know too much about her, but Kirsty, a player that we've highlighted a few times on this show when we're looking at the Women's Series, and in particular that race to qualify for the Women's World Matchplay. She's been someone that we've touted as someone to maybe do it, and she's had some big scalps. She's beaten Bo in the Women's Series. She's beaten a lot of the big women's names in that Women's Series over the last 12-18 months. So if she can get past Amanda, I think that's a very tough test for Bo to get things off. Dita Hedman, she's going to play the winner of Kirsty Hutchinson and Veronica Ehash. I think that's going to be a tough game, whoever comes through that one. So that will be one to watch. And just lastly, the boys, moving up from 4 to 8 players. I'm excited to see these young lads play on that stage. Archie Self, who we've had on the show, Lex Passhouse, who we spoke about recently after he won the boys World Masters. They're both in that bottom half of the draw, a potential semi-final between those two. And if they can make it through that first round of games in the quarterfinals. And the standout tie for me, Jensen Walker against Mason Tees. Jensen, probably the favourite to win the whole thing, but Mason, he made the World Masters boys final, and I think he's going to be a handful for Jensen in that first game.
I'll start with one of the things that actually what you started out with, but mentioning in passing, withdrawal of a few players. And I think that's what jumps out the most at me. It's not just that, we have a couple big names withdrawing. It's how many names have been withdrawn. Of the 48 players in the men's field, 7 of them are replacement players. Only 41 were the players who had qualified initially, the others from the various alternate lists, whether it's the overall alternate list or the regional alternate lists. And that's a lot. And on the women's side, we have 2 as you have 4 in the women's side to make it a total of 11 players will not be here, including two of the biggest names in women's darts in Noah Lynn van Leeuwen and Fallon Sherrick. The biggest name, Bo Greaves. Well, I don't know if Bo Greaves, probably Fallon Sherrick is still the biggest name in women's darts, but Bo Greaves is definitely the best player in the world. She is there. But that's a lot of players withdrawn, and it's leaving a lot of players in this field, some of whom I couldn't pick out of a lineup if they were the only person in the lineup. And it takes away from the luster of this event when you have such a field of players that are utterly nondescript, even to people who follow darts. That's not to say that there aren't some big names in here, and you went through some of them. Neil Duff, obviously, is the former champion. Jimmy Vansky, who's been playing very, very well, in the Challenge Shrine and Modus this year. Long Kai Fan, who we've seen before in the PDC. Thomas Younghans. There are some good players in this event, but and I'm sure a lot of players I haven't heard of are good, but I don't know anything about them. And while, like in the PDC World Championships, I look forward to seeing those international players I don't know anything about because there are relatively few of them. Here, a good number of the matches are going to be between players I've never seen before. And even the ones I've seen before, most of them I'm just not looking that forward to. That said, there's a couple matches that jump out. You mentioned Brian Rahman, a former quarterfinalist in this event from a few years back. He's also former number one in the WDF before winning his tour card in the PDC. He has a very interesting first-round tie against Corne Groeneveld. We talked about Groeneveld after the World Masters recently. A very, very good weekend in Hungary for him, not just with a good run at the World Masters, but also winning through these qualifiers and playing well on pretty much everything that weekend. A player we didn't know much about before, we still don't know much about because that's all we've really seen from him. But the little we did see from him that weekend has to make him one of the players that wouldn't surprise you if they were to go very far in this event, but for the fact that they have a very tough first-round match against Brian Rahman. I actually am looking forward to that match. I want to see that match because I think those are two players, the winner of whom could go on and maybe even win the title here. And you also mentioned Paul Lim. For many reasons, I want to see Paul Lim, but I also think that could be an interesting first-round tie as well. Moreno Bloom is a player we've seen bits and pieces of over the year. He's tried to make it in the PDC before. He's been on the Euro Tour a few times. Obviously most famous for a cheating scandal that he was involved in during COVID lockdown online. But he was 19, 20 years old then. He's still young, but almost certainly more mature now. I think that could be an interesting first-round tie. Darren Johnson, Reece Colley, another one that I think could be a decent match. But a lot of this, I just don't know who these players are. And I don't know what to look for and what to watch for. And over in the women's, the same. I'm not even going to say anything more because you said the exact matches and players I was looking forward to seeing. I don't think Vinnakainen will beat Bo Greaves, but I think of the players entering in the first round, she might have the best chance. The only other match that you didn't mention was Lorraine Hyde against Mayumi Uichi. I think that could be a good match, but that's about it. I think the best matches will come later on in that event if some of the best players move. And the thing to watch really is, can Bo Greaves make it a hat trick of World Championships? Anything else for this week?
Well, a few things. Firstly, thank you to our guests for joining us. Shout out to the PDC for helping us get in touch with Ritchie Edhouse. We've been trying to get him on, I'd probably say, for the last 6 months, Dalfit, and he'll be able to back me up here. He's a very hard man to get hold of. He doesn't like doing any media or interviews, so thanks to Ritchie for taking the time to chat with us. Thank you to Connor as well. Always good to catch up with one of our episode 1 guests, and what a year he's having. Good luck in the Grand Slam. And thank you to our sponsors, to Darts Corner, Condor Darts and Kwiff for their continued support. You heard from Jack from Kwiff earlier in the show. If you fancy a flutter on the darts, Kwiff is the place to go. Links in the description. 18 plus, T's and C's apply. Please gamble responsibly. BeGambleAware.org. And for all your darting equipment, Darts Corner is the place to go. A new addition on the site actually in the last week or so. Personalised darts cases. You can add your own images, text, graphics, you name it. Go and check them out. I've had a little play around on there and might have to treat myself to one, but they're also a great Christmas present as well. So I think that is everything. As always, thank you to everyone for listening. We maybe are going to try and squeeze in an episode during the Grand Slam next week. Hang tight for that if it does happen. But if not, the message is always simple. Go and enjoy the darts, and we'll speak to you after the Grand Slam.
Indeed. It is nonstop November, as you said earlier, so maybe we should try to squeeze an episode in, but we'll figure that out. I know sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We'll just have to see check our diaries and see if it is feasible. But if it is, then maybe Tuesday after the group stage or Thursday after the second round will be when that is. But yeah, we're getting closer to the World Championships. We know almost the entire field for the PDC World Championships. It seems like we know the entire field for the WDF World Championships, but who knows? Always the potential for more withdrawals if players qualify through the remaining regional spots to the PDC World Championships. So we'll try to get some of those players on, particular ones you might not have heard from before. Let us know anyone you want to hear from. Keep your questions coming. We'll try to answer them the best we can. Until then, you just got to hang tight a little bit longer.